3, 2, 1. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, the Lo-Fi Horror Guy. Today, we got a couple of treats for you. First off, we are going to check out Get Out. Jordan Peele's Get Out, his directorial debut. After that, I've got two recommendations for you guys to check out protagonist movies, horror, thriller movies that you were just hoping that by the end, the lead character or the hero of the day is going to arrive at top and victorious. But I'm going to leave it up to you to watch them to see what ends up happening. However, for Get Out, we're going to have some spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, cut this out of your daily watch. I am excited for Jordan Peele's new movie, Us, that is going to be coming out later this week. So I decided that I wanted to review his first movie, and then I'm going to do a review of Us after I watch that in theater. I missed Get Out in theater. Friends of mine had told me about it for a long time. I kind of was a little late to come into it. Finally watched it, and it is a favorite in my collection for sure. This is my SteelBook edition, 2017 Jordan Peele's directorial debut. SteelBook is a cover, side art, back art with the haunting teacup, if you will. Very simple aesthetic, but still enough. If you know, you know. On the inside here, we've got my code, which I am stingy. You cannot have. That is the main character, Chris, falling into the sunken place, double disc. Just as far as the general layout, the general aesthetic of the SteelBook, this thing is beautiful. I love it. The eyes on the cover are very haunting to me. Particularly in this movie, the lead character, which is played by Daniel Kaluuya, forgive me if I am mispronouncing that, his eyes tell so much of a story in this movie. Whether it's moments that he's, in joy, or moments that he's in terror, moments that he's just absolutely distressed, his eyes tell so much more than what his dialogue does in this movie. And before I'd watched it a couple of times, I kind of thought about the cover art. It's okay. It's nothing amazing. I absolutely love the layout in this thing. It is very cool to me. He does a great job in the movie, if I can give him that. I didn't really know him beforehand, before this movie, but he does a great job, and I definitely follow him now. Get Out was filmed in 23 days, won an Academy Award for the Best Original Screenplay. Jordan Peele actually originally got the idea for the movie from a Eddie Murphy skit in one of his stand-ups, talking about how white people, in like Amityville Horror or the Poltergeist, move into a house, end up having ghosts or such, and then for whatever reason still staying. and I thought that was really funny. He was like, he went on saying in an interview something to the effect of, oh man, this house is so beautiful, it's perfect, I love that we just moved in. And the moment that they see a house, they're like, well, peace out, it's been nice, and move on with life. Absolutely what I would do as well, even though, the beautiful scenery is just tough to pass up. But I agree, Jordan Peele, I would do the same exact thing. If I can dig into the movie, generally I do pros and cons with movies. There wasn't a whole lot that I didn't like about this, or that I can gripe about with the movie to say cons. It's more so pros. First of all, the score was done by Michael Abels, I believe it is. Did a great job. Some of the stuff was a little jump scare-esque. I'm not much for that whole like paranormal activity where like all the scares depend on the sound and such. But this did a great job. I'm not saying that was, that way by any means. The Childish Gambino track that's in there, some of the songs that are kind of hidden in. The guy had never done a score for a film before, and Jordan Peele just found him off of some video on YouTube. Very cool story. I love it. Very nice. And he did the score to Us as well. So dude's got a huge career coming ahead of him. As I said before, Daniel Kaluuya, I believe it is, did a great job in the movie. Catherine Keener, if I can mention her performance, was very haunting, very chilling, in a monotone, calm way. She didn't do anything that was over the top. It wasn't anything that was, in your face and spooky. But she was haunting in her own right. The whole scene, if I can dissect as far as when he goes downstairs and wakes up from his dream, or wakes up from his nightmare and such, he goes downstairs to go for a walk, and Catherine Keener's character is sitting in the study room there. The whole scene where she starts dissecting into his mother's passing and digging into more and more details, and she's spinning that spoon in the teacup. It's not anything that to look into is just terrifying or like a spook moment, like you saw a ghost running behind or something. But in its own right, that scene is creepy. Just the whole conversation, the way that she just doesn't stop and she just keeps on pulling details. It's almost like you can see in his face he is reacting like any other man that I've ever known as far as crying. He sits there and he's so calm and he's trying to pull it back and he's trying to not to react to certain things that she's asking, just so she doesn't keep going. And then finally, when tears do start dropping, it's just like with a 10-pound weight just dropping down his face, and it's it's a hard scene to watch just because you feel the genuineness as far as the hurt that he's feeling in it. That scene in particular was one that stays with me as far as a favorite moment in the movie. And then the whole part when he gets thrown into the sunken place and, she says drop or whatever it is, or fall, or and next thing he's falling back and back and back and back, and and he can still see her looking in as if he's a window or a portal. He's falling back further into the sunken place, and then wakes up and doesn't know if that was reality or if that was just a dream or such. Very key moment into the movie. I loved it. The use of foreshadowing that Jordan Peele did in his directorial debut. The use of foreshadowing as far as in the beginning with the deer getting hit and then him going to see it and watching the deer suffering, ultimately dying. With the deer getting hit and him seeing that, and it kind of focuses on the deer's eyes and then his eyes and such. And then further into the movie, it goes into the part where he's ultimately kind of facing his end, so to speak, and he's bound in the chair, sitting there forced to watch that television that's kind of putting him into telekinesis, or putting him into like a hypnosis. And then he's got the deer head staring right at him, and it's almost kind of like a thing where it's like, oh, okay, earlier in the movie, that was that deer's imminent death, that was that deer's end. Now you have this deer staring right at you, and this is your end. But, ultimately, then further into that, you have, he gets out of the, he gets free from the chair and beats up old boy, the brother, kills him, and then he goes and he kills the neurosurgeon with the deer head, the antlers on the deer head, which is, the neurosurgeon was played by Bradley Whitford. I thought that whole thing was cool. That whole sequence where, in the beginning, the deer is kind of is death, and then it comes back and the deer is kind of like a moment for him to see that this is the end for him. And then ultimately, that deer head actually was what got him out of his end and brought an end to a long history of pain and suffering, in a sense. I thought that whole foreshadowing thing, whether or not maybe I'm digging into it too much, but I thought that was very cool. I loved that part. Bradley Whitford, as I just mentioned, I hadn't really seen him in anything since Billy Madison. But he did great. The use of casting was awesome. I love that. I thought that was very cool. I guess to move on, another thing I enjoyed was the small little things, just little minute details. Obviously, the underlying theme of the movie was that racism is still very real. It's still very strong. It's still a thing. And even though things might be getting better or worse, you know, depending on how you see it, it's still there. And I thought that he did a good job just with slipping in little things like the scene where the girlfriend there is eating the cereal. She's eating the colored, you know, whatever it is type cereal, and then her milk is separate from that. And you know, at first when I saw it, I was like, that's kind of weird. I didn't really think too much into it, but I noticed it. It was something, you know, different out of the norm. And sure enough, in an interview, Jordan Peele was saying that he did that out of a context for colors and whites to be separate. I thought that was a very interesting part to the movie. Just little things like that. There's definitely different little sprinkles every once in a while that you can find, little intricacies of Easter eggs, I guess you could say. I thought it was cool, the little Easter eggs like that were sprinkled through, just smaller little details here and there. So shout out to Jordan Peele. Very cool movie for your debut. I loved it. Cons, I can't really say much as far as what I didn't like about the movie. A couple of uses of jump scares or the use of music in general to be loud in one moment and then just kind of, you know, like throw you back. But that's minute. That's barely anything. You know, a little bit for me isn't, and it's not so much against the movie per se, was the hype behind the movie. You know, you had all sorts of different people online talking about it was the best movie in the world, it was the best thing that's ever been done. Chance the Rapper bought tickets to like every theater in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken, and just told people to bring their ID in like in a tweet and go and enjoy the movie. You know, just that type of stuff. I was a little late to see it, and so, you know, when you hear all those things, you kind of get deterred and you kind of get bummed out because you're like, well, if I go see it, you know, and it sucks, or, you know, it's not what I'm living it up, you know, to everybody building it up to be. You know, who knows? But I watched it and I ended up absolutely loving Get Out. Very, very cool. I would give it, out of 5 high fives, out of 5 high fives, I would give it a 4.3 out of 5 high fives. Very cool movie. Some definite, you know, scenes that stick with you. Another pro that I could say with it was that I appreciated that they stuck with the original ending. If you get the SteelBook, or I'm sure probably even just the regular Blu-ray, it shows the original ending where instead of the TSA officer coming, his buddy, it's 2 police officers that come and arrest Chris. He goes to prison. The TSA officer comes to visit him in prison, is talking to him, you know, trying to get details of what might have happened, some of the names. The house burnt down, so obviously they had a hard time as far as, you know, really proving anything as far as, you know, like the surgeries or anything like that, or, you know, some of the people that were in there that might have, you know, some sort of information. So ultimately the protagonist in the movie ends up going, you know, away to prison, and, you know, he's satisfied with it because he stopped something that's been going on for so long, and, you know, just a overall negative thing that he put an end to. So he's, you know, happy with it. But as far as the ending, I would not have been too happy with that. I am glad that they stuck with the ending that they did. Big thumbs up, 4.3 out of 5 high fives, 19.5 out of 23.2. You know what I'm saying. So that was my portion on Get Out. Get out to a store and check it out. Very cool. The SteelBook's probably on eBay or so. You know, whatever. Just grab a copy of it. That movie is sweet. Now, my 2 streams for today to give a shout out to, my honorable mentions, if you will. Number 1 is 2014's Tusk. Kevin Smith wrote and directed it. He typically is a comedic director, actor. Was responsible for Clerks, Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, Mallrats, all of the above. You know, that whole kind of universe there with Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith. And various actors that came along with that. Very good movie. Basically, Justin Long is the initial main character, the protagonist, if you will. He is a podcaster, kind of a cocky, arrogant fella. He gets an opportunity to go to Canada to interview a doctor that he's been, dying to interview, if you will. He winds up going to Canada and ultimately goes to this guy's house, which is Michael Parks, who is terrifying in his own right as well. He goes to his house, and it kind of goes downhill from there. Without saying too much, I would say it's kind of like Human Centipede, but I liked Tusk. I liked the effort in this movie a whole lot better than I did with the Human Centipede. There was still lighter heart, kind of Kevin Smith moments as far as a little bit of humor being sprinkled in here and there with it being a Kevin Smith movie. But 2014's Tusk, I would check it out. It is on Netflix right now, and it is a honorable mention for sure. Number two honorable mention here, we're going with Bone Tomahawk. It is on Amazon Prime. It was released out in 2015. S. Craig Zahler was the director of it. When you have this movie here, it is set in Western times. It's got Kurt Russell. It's got Patrick Wilson. It's got Richard Jenkins. It's got David Arquette, who makes a feature. It's got Sid Haig, who makes a feature. You don't really know what to expect kind of going into it, other than it says that there, basically is a couple of outlaws that lead a pack of cannibals into a quiet town. Ultimately, the cannibals end up going and kidnapping several of the settlers that were in said town. And Kurt Russell, along with some other fellas there. Kurt Russell is the sheriff in the film, and they set out to go and find these townsfolk and wind up in a whole heap of trouble, if I can just say. One mention in the movie, I've seen it now 3 times. There's a particular scene that turns my stomach every time. I've seen lots of gross things in horror movies. I've seen lots of gross things in real life. But there is a particular scene, I don't want to give it away, or I don't want to, have you not want to watch it, or have you not watch it in general because I'm about to tell you, but there's a particular scene in general where there is a murder that happens. And Kurt Russell's character and Richard Jenkins' character are imprisoned, basically. And while this murder is happening, Kurt Russell is telling the person being murdered there, he's saying, just know that the cavalry is coming. I have a cavalry coming right now. They will avenge you. Just know that. It's one of those moments where, you're so bummed out for the characters. And actually in the dialogue he says, well, Sheriff, I thought you might have a backup plan, or you might have something, more in store. And, the sheriff's like, no, I don't. And it's just a very low moment in the movie, very depressing moment, if you will, and you just kind of feel like your stomach drops and you're just kind of now awaiting imminent death with the characters. But Bone Tomahawk, S. Craig Zahler does some sweet stuff. I absolutely love that movie, even though there's a couple of scenes that I sometimes kind of feel like I'm going to pull the old cover and I kind of lift it. Okay, no, they're not done. There is some brutal stuff in that movie. Those are my 2 suggestions for you today. My 2 honorable mentions as far as protagonist themes go. We first went over Get Out. I then mentioned Kevin Smith's Tusk. And then I mentioned S. Craig Zahler's Bone Tomahawk. Go and check those out. Those are both available for stream. Tusk is on Netflix. Bone Tomahawk is on Amazon Prime. Very worth watching. My record for the day, seeing as I am so excited for the new Godzilla movie. The original soundtrack to Godzilla. Ooh, it's so nice too. It does not have the Blue Oyster Cult track on it, but very cool soundtrack. I absolutely love that. Death Waltz is the company that released that. Mucho de niso, Death Waltz. Thank you very much. Without further ado, I absolutely appreciate you guys watching. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of your boys, the Lo-Fi Horror Guy. Give me a ding, give me a dong, give me a bing, give me a bong, give me a like, give me a share. If you don't, I do not care. At the end of the day, I just want to enjoy a nice scare, some nice, not political views, just some good old scares, some good old horror movie soundtracks that don't include Blue Oyster Cult. We're out of this business in 3, 2, 1.